recorded it. And
I'm assuming the Hollywood movie stars are you and Rick, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, it goes without saying. So welcome everybody to the Firestone Institute co-coaching course and Ninja Real Estate course. And tonight we're lucky to have Denise MacPherson and Stuart MacPherson with us. And they're going to talk to us about the power of using RRSPs to fund real estate. And it's something I heard a lot about it earlier in my career, but I didn't really know much about it. And I have to admit, the first time I heard Denise and Stuart give this presentation, I had no idea what they were talking about. Not because they did a bad job at presenting, it's just because when I did my engineering accounting course and finance course a long time ago now, I got 50% in that course. That's called a pity pass. And so I got a pity pass, and ever since then, when somebody shows me accounting statements and financial statements, I need somebody sitting right next to me to explain it all. So the second time I heard the presentation, it started to sink in. So that just tells you how thick I am. But it's a tremendous opportunity for people who are involved in real estate like we are. So Denise and Stuart, just so you know, I'm training a bunch of folks here to do some real estate coaching. And of course, I do some real estate investment coaching as well. And I wanted people to understand both for themselves as individual practitioners and also for people who are advising other people, the power of RRSP financing. Denise and Stuart told me that there's nearly $1 trillion of RRSP or registered funds in Canada, something like that, I think you said, guys?
Yeah, we're having trouble finding the stats, but it might even be more than that.
Yeah, so it's, whether it's $1 trillion or $1 trillion a bit or a little bit
it's less, lots.
Really matter. There's lots. And most people, everyone on this call knows, most people today are not super thrilled with their returns on their mutual funds or their RRSPs or their TFSAs, tax-free savings accounts. And this is what we're going to hear in the next few minutes from Denise and Stuart. How this is an alternative for people who want to invest, and it's through self-directed RRSP. So we're very lucky, and thank you again, Denise, and thank you, Stuart, for coming tonight. So over to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I mean, it's well, thank you, yes, for the invite. This is absolutely wonderful. I mean, this is something that is passionate for us because this is something that we have been using right from the start when we first started investing, using RRSPs to fund our real estate. And it's a strategy that everyone can use. And everything that we're going to talk about is something that we do. So you're getting the personal experience also from all of this.
Now, the one thing that we want to mention right off the bat is that when we talk about RRSPs, we really mean all registered funds, whether you're talking RESPs, RIFs, LIRAs, or TFSAs. The rules all apply to them, and all of those funds are available for use as mortgages.
Now, we get a lot of times that one of the biggest questions we get is, can we use our own RSPs for our own properties or our own investment properties? And boils down to really what's the difference between arm's length and non-arm's length, because it all depends on how the funds, where they're coming from. So the whole idea here is when you're talking about non-arm's length, is that means it's you. Your funds, yes, but if you are borrowing them, so you're the lender and the borrower both, that's considered non-arm's length. If it's an immediate relative, so we're talking about anything from adoption to close family member, or what's the other one? Close family member,
in-laws,
adoption. Yeah,
marriage.
In-laws, yeah, marriage. So anything like that, immediate relatives is considered non-arm's length. Or if you control or own a corporation, that is all considered non-arm's length. That means that, can you use your own RSPs? The answer is yes. However, the rules are totally different. And if you use your own RSPs, what you end up having to do is qualify from a traditional lending institution to do that mortgage. You must be CMHC insured. The fees are higher. All the requirements are a lot more stringent. So we tend to say, stay away from that. You're better off loaning your RSPs out or any of your registered funds, get that interest back into your account, and borrow somebody else's.
So can I chip in here, Denise? Is it okay?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, if you don't mind, questions or comments as we go, is that okay?
That's right.
That's fine.
So everybody, if you have a comment or a question, please go ahead. But just to put something on the record, Denise and Stuart know that I wanted to use my LIRA, my locked-in retirement account, to help me get back on my feet after the Ottawa Senators went bankrupt. And to do that, some of you on this call tonight know that one of the first things I did was not sell something, but buy something. So my strategy wasn't to sell something to try and stave off, financial difficulties back in the 2005, 6, and 7 era when the Sens were going bankrupt and did go bankrupt. So I went out and I bought a townhouse. And some of you will recall it's a townhouse that is a part of, I think there's 18 or 19 townhouses in a row there. And they trade for around $400,000, and I bought it for $241,250. So everybody kind of knows that story. I think I've told that story before. And the reason I got it about $150,000 below market was because the lady who owned it, it had been for sale for over 400 days. She was a hoarder, and it did not show well, and that's putting it, politely. But I bought it from Joan, and I said, Joan, just give me the keys. You walk away. I'll take care of all your precious stuff, which meant for 3.5 weeks, myself and my 2 boys and a helper threw everything out. I think we took out 6 or 8 full loads of junk. But once we had done that, the place filled up with light and air and beauty, and we renovated it for about $50,000. So now we had about $290,000 invested in a property that was now worth $400,000. So I was able to remortgage it, and then I was kind of back in the game. So that was what I did. But how did I get the funds to close on it? Well, I had one asset that was remaining after the Sens bankruptcy, other than my now 13-year-old Saab, and that was my LIRA. So I went to a law firm in Ottawa, and I won't mention their name, but I went to a law firm in Ottawa, and I'll call the person Jim. And I went to Jim and I said, I'm going to buy this property in about 2 months, and I want to access my locked-in retirement account. And what I want to do is I want to lend money from my LIRA to myself. So that would be non-arm's length, right?
That's right.
Correct.
And he said, no problem. We do them all the time. As Denise said when she was talking a few minutes ago, the fees are a little bit higher. The barriers are a little bit higher. It's a little bit more difficult to do, but yeah, we can handle it. I said, great. 3 days before closing, I get a call, not from Jim, but from his legal assistant saying, oh, Mr. Firestone, we didn't realize this was a non-arm's length transaction. I said, excuse me? What do you mean you didn't realize it? Well, we didn't know that. I said, well, no, just a moment. I have about 7 or 8 emails between myself and Jim specifying exactly what it is that we wanted to do. And she said, well, I don't know about that. But no, we don't do that, those kinds of financings. They're very difficult to do, and it's so complicated, we don't do it. And I said, well, okay, what's your plan? She said, what do you mean, what's my plan? I said, well, what's your plan? I'm accessing my LIRA for the equity to buy this building in 3 days, and you're calling me that it's not available. So I assume that you're lending me the money so I could buy this thing. No, she said, I don't think so. I'll have to get Jim to call you back. He never called me back. About an hour and a half later, I got an email, guys. If I were to print it out, the email would probably be about 6 pages long. And it was all kinds of case law and legal rationalizations as to why they weren't responsible for my predicament. Okay, you guys are following me so far?
Yeah.
You can imagine Jim is not on my Christmas card list, right? No. So what I did was I did exactly what Denise just said. I want everybody to understand, because Denise and Stuart, as you know, people learn in many different ways, but one of the ways is by storytelling. So that's what I'm doing here. So what I ended up doing, believe it or not, you guys, I have a $70,000 second mortgage on a chicken coop in Carleton Place. Because it was a true story. This young fellow I know, he's a wonderful young man, was going to build, this is a really nice chicken coop, a $70,000 chicken coop, and he needed 70 grand. So I loaned him $70,000 from my LIRA, and he loaned me on I think the day after or the day before, an amount of money that was a little bit different. So it wasn't the same day, and it wasn't the same amount. So he loaned me $70,000 and I loaned them 69,000 or something like that. And so it would pass muster, we hope anyway, with Canada Revenue Agency. And he charges me 3% interest on that loan from his RRSP to me, and I charge him 3% on my loan to him. But we just picked that. It could have been 8%, it could have been another different number. So I'm with Denise 110%. Do not even think about using your own RRSPs to fund yourself. Fund somebody else's, if you decide that's what you want to do, somebody else's, investment at whatever interest rate you agree to, and they can help you with the way that I do with Cheyenne Wicks in Carleton Place. So there you go.
And it's true that's why we suggest, you're better off using your own and lending it to somebody else. And then the arm's length is everyone else. And even looking at Stuart and I and everybody online, none of us are related to any of you. So that means we're all arm's length from each other. So that includes everyone else that is not kind of family or corporate or immediate relatives. So
now, the other thing that happens when we talk about this, people will ask us, is there money available in RRSPs to use this? And the simple answer is, you're darn right there is. I mean, Bruce mentioned earlier that there's well over $1 trillion in RRSP money available. I found a stat earlier today that in 2016, the Finance Department advised that the fair market value of tax-free savings accounts had exceeded $233 billion.
Wow.
So there's lots of money sitting in these registered accounts. The question is, are people getting the return that they're looking for in the way that they're investing? Because most of us grew up thinking about RRSPs or registered funds have to go into mutual funds or maybe into the stock market. And the answer is CRA's got a long list of things that you are allowed to invest in. Mortgages is one of them.
Wow.
So the one thing is that a person would be willing to lend their registered funds because they're going to get an active rate of return. It's secure. I mean, when you put money into the mutual funds of the stock markets, it's not secure at all. You got to hope that things are going to happen well. Whereas, as we all know, because of the business we're in, real estate is fairly secure. It's far more secure than stocks and mutual funds as long as the real estate property is being managed properly. So that comes into some of the due diligence of the lender when they decide to check out the borrower. The other neat thing is the way that we do all of our lending is that there's no hidden fees. As we all know, in mutual funds, there's these management fees and all these other fees that are hidden. In the case of loaning out registered funds, there's no hidden fees. Everything is upfront. All the costs are paid by the borrower. The person lending the money is getting a true rate of return. So bottom line is, yeah, people are willing to lend money if you're willing to borrow. So when it comes to why would you borrow an RRSP, I mean, you can probably get money cheaper elsewhere, but the one thing to keep in mind, as one of our early mentors always taught us, availability of money, not the cost of money, is what's most important. If you've got money available and it's a good deal, there's probably enough in there to cover the cost of it, and it means that you can actually do the deal. Whereas if you don't have access to the money, you may not be able to do the deal.
that's right.
So Stuart, what kind of interest rates are people typically, getting on their RRSP loans?
It will vary depending on the project, who the lender is, who the borrower is. But what we're seeing right now is a mortgage in first position is probably going somewhere between 8 and 10%.
Yeah.
A mortgage in second position is probably going somewhere between 10 and 18%, again, depending on the risk.
So 8 to 10% is kind of a number that I'm fairly comfortable with, given that most of the people that are on this call and the people that we deal with, their internal rates of return in real estate are anywhere from 18 to 24%. So if you're borrowing money at 8% or even 10% for a year, so it's kind of a bridge, right? Yeah. That's okay, but I wouldn't want to see rates that are much higher than that.
No, and again, as we talk about, one of the things that we use these strategies for is shorter term loans. This is not something you'd want to take out a 25-year amortization on.
No, it'd be way too expensive to do something like that.
Yeah, as you said, it's good for bridge financing.
Yeah, and it's great because there's no bank qualifying at this time. As long as you meet what the lender is looking for, then you're going to be okay. So you're not caught in that system, the financial system of having to prove so much and give your firstborn and all of that stuff. You don't need that. So there's no bank qualifying here. And what I like about borrowing RRSPs is how it can get structured so you can actually increase your cash flow. So as you talk that when you borrow it more for a short term, what if you didn't have to pay a monthly fee? What if you didn't have to pay until, you closed out that mortgage? So whether you sold it or you refinanced or whatever it is that you did at the end of that term, the idea is you pay all of the interest in the principal at the end. So that really makes it a lot easier for somebody to handle that cash flow while they're working on that project.
And of course, the other thing is that using these strategies allows you to increase your return on investment because you're using other people's money. And we're just going to talk about a couple of the ways that we do that. We gave them fancy names just so that it would be fun. So I like to call this the equity takeout technique. Basically, what this is using RRSPs for second mortgages and using leverage. Now, in a typical real estate deal, let's say you decide to purchase a property for $400,000. Your typical down pay is 20%, so that's $80,000 going in. Assuming that you've got 3% appreciation over 5 years, after 5 years, the property's worth $464,000. Now, if you had to sell that property, your profit would be $64K, which is a return of investment of 80% overall, which is 16% a year. Now, just for the purpose of this, I'm only going to talk about appreciation. I'm not going to talk about cash flow or mortgage paid in, just to keep it really simple. So by using leverage, you can actually make a whole lot more money. Let's use the same idea where you're purchasing at $400K, you're putting a first mortgage on of 80%, but shortly after closing, you put a second mortgage on of $40,000. So you're taking some of the equity back out. And let's say you're going to pay 10% interest rate on that. Again, 5 years passes, we've averaged 3% appreciation. It's again valued at $464,000 if you decide to sell. You pay off the cost of the second mortgage, which over the 5 years has now come up to $20K. Your profit is $44K, which is a return on investment of 110% because you've only got $40K in the deal. So that's 22% per annum. The other neat thing is you started off with $80K in your pocket and went out and bought one property. Using this strategy, you only had $40K in the property, so you could have actually gone out looking for another property and even then increased your profits. So you'd make far more than the $64K that you would have made on the initial deal.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I think these numbers are great for buy, hold, sell, but I think they work just as well if it's buy, hold, improve, animate, refinance, and hold on to the
We'll
property.
get into that.
We like to call that our bank avoidance technique.
Okay, I'm excited about the bank avoidance thing.
Yeah, what Stuart basically talked about was about a second mortgage, which is typically what the average, well, not average, but what the investor understands about RSPs. If they know about RSP mortgages, they only think about second mortgages. Something that we've been able to do, again, right from the start and over the last few years, is using RSP mortgages for first mortgages, or RSP funds for first mortgages. And this here is just an example of a property that we purchased, and then this is the basement, obviously, that is being gutted. It was turned into a secondary suite. So what we did is we bought the property with 100% loan to value. We did all of the improvements, everything to it, and then we went and refinanced and rented it out. So it is this is one of our properties in our portfolio today that we initially bought at a low price. We basically fixed it up, which basically you renovate and animate, because you're creating a lot of value. So by the time you go to the refinance, what you've done is you've bought basically at a lower level, but there's quite a gap from the after repair value. So what happens is by the time you refinance, what usually happens is you have very little or none of your money left in the property because you've increased the value so much. And this is really the best way to be able to use these first mortgages, because when you can show that there's quite that gap from purchase price to after repair value, it's usually pretty good to get 100% loan to value. And that's how we've been able to do a lot of our properties.
Can I ask a question?
Fantastic technique.
Can I ask a question, Denise? So just because it'll help me understand it, can you go back one slide?
Power of technology.
That's a second mortgage.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah.
Can you go back one more slide? Thank you. So let's say that, Denise, the bank avoidance technique, you bought that property for $400,000, right?
Yes.
Are you saying that you put in place a $400,000 RRSP first mortgage?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So does everybody understand? So Denise and Stuart bought that property. I'm just making up the numbers as I go. For say,
Well, actually, use an actual number. 350 is what 350 or 55 we bought it for.
So you bought it for $355,000, and you had a first mortgage of almost the full amount.
Of the full amount. And then what we did was we used other funds in order to do the renovations.
Right, that was my next question. So you bought this place for $355,000. You had a first mortgage, RRSP mortgage, probably at around 8% interest.
That's right.
Okay, at 8%, and it was virtually 100% financed. And then how much was the renovation cost to add the basement suite?
We put about 100K in there because it was the original owner was living in the house and hadn't really done anything to it in the last 50 years.
Well, that's probably a good story, a good news story. And the reason for that is, as most people on this call know, or everybody I think, is that I hate it when somebody has said, "Oh yeah, we've already fixed up our basement. You know, it's great. You know, handyman special," and you go in there and everything has to come out.
Yeah.
The bathroom that they put in is horrible. If they have a little wet bar down there, you know, it's full of mold. I mean, you know, they've got some sort of hung ceiling there that looks like crap. So you're paying for the handyman work that he or she they did, and then you have to take it all out, right, and start over. So actually, I think that's probably a good thing. But anyway, so you bought it for $355, first mortgage of $355 at 8%, all of it RRSP funds, and you needed $100,000 in renovation to do that. Where did that $100,000 come from, Stuart?
We actually used our own funds for that.
All right, so you used your own funds for that. Then after
but we have on other properties borrowed those funds.
Well, that's getting too complicated for me. So you're way ahead of me as usual. Like these guys are like here and I'm down here. So just slow down. So
through ELOC and other methods, we had access to funds and we used that.
We'll come back to that. Okay, just we'll go with my simple mind for a minute. So you've now got a building that's worth $455, right?
No, it's worth $512.
No, I mean, I'm sorry. The cost is $455,000.
Yeah,
$355. Oh, $455. Yes,
with renovation.
Yes, with rentals.
Right. So, and what was the appraised value?
$512.
$512. And then what did you do?
What we did was we're a traditional 30-year mortgage.
80% loan to value.
Rented out the upstairs, rented out the downstairs. We're making a nice profit on that. Nice little penny.
Okay, but just to do the numbers again, so your cost was $455. The appraised value was $512. 80% loan to value is about $410.
Yep.
So you ended up with about $45,000 of your money in this building.
That's correct.
All right. So it's not quite no money down, you guys. But the RRSP loan was a bridge. And how long did you need that bridge for, guys?
That one actually ran a little bit long. We ran into some challenges in the renovations. So it took us almost a year to get everything tidied up.
Listen, I get that. So
the nice thing was that our carrying costs over that year were zero during the renovations because we had deferred everything into a balloon payment at the end.
So does everybody understand that? It means Denise and Stuart capitalized the interest and the payments, right? So that it was due and on the refinancing. Now, Stuart, I cut you off. You were going to tell me that if it was poor old Bruce here and he was doing the same thing that you guys just did, where would I get that $100,000 from to renovate?
Well, what you'd have to do is take a look at what resources you've got access to. Whether you've got another property that you want to borrow money against, whether you've got a home equity line of credit, whether you've got a rich uncle sitting there who's willing to support you in your business.
And we've done private loans actually for renos on other properties.
You can also use your expertise and bring in a JV partner.
Yeah, you know how many partners I like to have for the people I coach?
Probably zero.
Rick, help me out. Yeah, zero. If we can, if we can have it. I'm not saying that in every case. Just so you know, look, Simon and Nick are closing on a property on February 1st, right, Simon?
That's correct. Yeah.
And you guys have some Toronto financiers who are putting up all of the money.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Excellent.
So you know, they're using a Man River technique, and you know, Simon and Nick are entrepreneurs with time and energy, some money, and they have some wealthy entrepreneurs, wealthy folks who are a bit older in Toronto who have lots of money but not a whole lot of time, and it's a marriage made in heaven. But so you know, we do use investors. You know, so investors I can tolerate. I don't like partners. Does everybody know the difference between an investor and a partner? Trish, can you tell us?
I prefer to pay a rate of interest on money borrowed.
So Trish, what's the difference between a partner and an investor?
An investor, well, partner has ownership in it. Investor doesn't.
No, the investor can have both debt and equity. So the investor could have some ownership and probably does.
Yeah, but it's not. What I meant is not like they have less. I don't know how to explain it.
It's okay. Keep trying.
Sorry, I can't articulate. Like what I'm trying to say is that, like for example, you have the majority ownership over it than the investor would. And
right. That's exactly right. So a partner wants a big say in things. He or she wants to be consulted all the time. They want to have some control. They want to sort of maybe in a way tell the entrepreneur what to do. And entrepreneurs, you know, Guillaume, how much do entrepreneurs like being told what to do?
Zero.
Zero. You know, entrepreneurs are notoriously independent. So a typical investor, you know, he or she, they'll want to see maybe financial statements 4 times a year, every quarter. They might want to go to a meeting once or twice a year. But partners, they're on the phone to you, they're emailing you every day, and that's a big difference for entrepreneurs. So most entrepreneurs can handle investor interest, you know, and deal with that. But with partners, it's really complicated. Decision making bogs down, and often businesses and real estate investments become orphans, right? Because after a while, the entrepreneur loses interest, and the partner loses interest, and then who's taking care of the business and the property? No one. So coming back again to what you just said, Denise, at the end there, was sometimes you've made private loans for the renovation. And is that from RRSP money?
No, straight cash. Just straight cash, paid them an interest and an interest amount, and that was it. And paid it back once we refinanced or sold.
And is it secured on the property as well?
Nope. It was a private loan, period.
Okay.
Private cash loan.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Back to you guys.
Okay. Do you want to go to the next slide?
So one of the things that we like to talk about is when a borrower, an investor, comes to us looking for money for a mortgage, one of the things that we do is we make sure that they are going to be able to satisfy the lender's due diligence. Basically what happens is that every lender we deal with wants to know that they're going to get repaid the amount of money that they've loaned, the interest that they've agreed to, in the time frame that they've agreed to. So satisfying that sort of due diligence is really important.
One of the big things is be able to show the value of the property that's going to be secured on that mortgage. And one of the things is you may need an appraisal or a recent agreement of purchase and sale, but you'll need something. And the lender will need to know what's going to be sort of the after repair value also through comparables, just to be able to understand that where he's coming in and where he's going to be able to get out is that the borrower will be able to pay it back. And it's important to have that plan because, again, the lender wants to know what's going to be happening with his money. So you need to have a clear plan inside your project and exiting your project.
So can I chip in one more time?
Yeah, at any time.
All right. So one of the things that you know, Denise and Stuart have said, and they talked about a 30-year conventional mortgage on the property that they own. I believe in much shorter amortization periods if you can manage it. So I understand where Denise and Stuart are coming from. I'm not saying that they're wrong and I'm right, but my view is a little bit different in the sense that I like much shorter amortization periods than most people would recommend. And the reason for that is that opens up the room for you to pay out your RRSP mortgage, or for that matter, any other financing that you have on it. You're hoping the property goes up in value and your mortgage is dropping quickly, and it opens up a bigger and bigger gap every year. And that's how a lot of people can finance future acquisitions. It's through amortization. 30-year amortization obviously takes 30 years to pay off the debt. I have some mortgages, as people know, that have amortization periods as low as 11 years. And as long as the cash flow is there, Stuart, that I have properties that can sustain that, I will decrease the amortization period as much as possible so that I'm paying off debt. And then when I want to refinance after 3 or 4 or 5 years, there's lots of room to do that to make sure, that I can acquire more property, or that I'm handling my obligations properly.
Agreed.
And just from what you said there, Bruce, just as an example, is I've had somebody that come to us and they were borrowing our funds. What they want to do, again, is a 5-year amortization, and they want to make payments. They want to make payments of principal and interest because they want to own it outright in 5 years.
I'm with you on that, Denise.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say it, but I actually have 2 mortgages on 3-year amortizations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And the reason for that is, I'm 67 years of age, and I would like to get rid of some debt by the time I'm 70, because you never know, right?
Yeah, that's right. So yes, I truly believe in that, but we look at our circumstances at the time, and that's a decision we made at the time, but that not all our properties are like that. So
I get that. But, Guillaume, you're so much younger, and Simon, you're so much younger. You might view it a little bit differently, but if the cash flow is there because we animated the property like Denise and Stuart did, they put in a basement suite and it's generating significant income. As long as the income is there, then you can shorten up that amortization period. What I really want people to avoid doing is listening to their mortgage broker or their banker or their lender who says, "Oh, don't worry about that. Leave it at a 30-year amortization. You can make a payment once a year and pay down your mortgage that way." Except that nobody ever does that.
mm-hmm. That's right. Oh. One of the things I mentioned is the experience of borrower. For us, we tend not to lend on people that are doing their very first property, because as we all know, people are doing their first property is where they make the most mistakes, and we like to work with experienced people, or at least if they're fairly new in the real estate game, they must be working with somebody that is very experienced, because again, we want to make sure that that money is protected. So
I agree. That's why people need really good coaches, right, Rick?
Absolutely.
Right
Hoorah.
So on a second mortgage, it's true that, you have to be able to show that you've got equity in the property to be able to borrow against it. Like we've had a request for a $75,000 second mortgage to find out that all they had was $25,000 equity. So it couldn't be done. So you need to make sure the equity is there. On a first mortgage, the fact you can do it on the purchase price 100%, that's just a bonus that it's a strategy that I think a lot of people should be using. So.
Denise, some mortgages allow a mortgage plus 10% towards renovations. Have you ever thought of doing that?
Well, with the trustee, when you're dealing with registered funds, you cannot exceed more than 100% loan to value, which is why we say you've got to find some other way to be able to use or to get that money to do renovations. So the other thing is too, is when you're borrowing money, the lender will want to know that you're credit worthy. So be prepared, and it doesn't always happen, but pre-prepare that you could be asked for your credit score and credit report. That's just typical. That's about it though. You're not bank qualifying or anything. They just want to know that you're sound basically, and that you'll be able to repay your debts. That's all.
Denise, would you say that most people, they need a credit score of 710 or higher?
Do you know what? I've only ever had one person out of the 9 years we've been doing mortgages that have asked for a credit rating and report. One. That's it.
Okay.
So.
And I think that person was less interested in the credit score as in the credit history.
Yeah. And the other thing is that exit strategy. It's always good when you buy a property that you have a couple of exits, because you know if what you had planned doesn't work out, there's another way to be able to get out of the property. But the thing is that when you're borrowing money from someone through, let's say, the registered funds, then they need to feel secure that they're going to get paid back. So you have to be very clear as how you're going to be paying that money back, how long it's going to take, and all that stuff. So that's going to be very clear to the lender. Now, we've had, again, a request. We had somebody that called us and wanted money, and I said, okay, so we're trying to find out the details, and I'm not getting any details. And I'm going, well, listen, you say you're going to take 4 months to renovate. I said, so what if it takes you 30, 60 days to refinance? He says, no. He said, I'll just hang on to it. Maybe I'll pay it back in a year. And I go, no. You know, you want to be clear. You need to feel confident as a lender to lend money out to an investor that you know you're going to get it back. And if it's too wishy-washy, it's not going to happen. And the other thing is, too, is be prepared to present a package to show how everything about your property and how you're going to pay it back. Too often we get requests from people who say, hey, listen, I need $600,000. I need it by next week. And this is it. I get an email. Well, guess what? They're not going to get much attention. And we get those a lot. Actually, we got a call yesterday from somebody that was asking for, was it $500,000?
Half of 2.3 million.
Oh, yeah. And could they get it next week? No. The answer is simple. No. We don't deal with just an email asking for, you know, funds. So.
And part of the reason for that is that as we know, any real estate transaction has some risk. And it's important that the lenders, if they're not experienced, they have to understand that this is not a completely risk-free environment. But one of the things that we do when we work with borrowers is we help them identify how they're going to mitigate risk.
Yeah. So one of the things that we look at too is that when we go for traditional financing, whether it is through a refinance or just straight first mortgage, whenever you're dealing with a banking institution, we always ask, well, we tend to use mortgage brokers rather than banks anyways. But when we deal with our mortgage broker, we always ask for them to allow secondary financing. It doesn't mean we will use it. We just like to know that it's there, because for a lot of people that want to do some equity takeout on their properties, if the institution does not allow it and you go ahead and do it, you're putting yourself at risk that they may call the first and second mortgage will have collapsed. So they're going to call the first mortgage in. So we always check to make sure that it allows secondary financing, even though we may never use it. So it's just one of the checks there. And like I said, on a first mortgage, then it's not an issue when you're dealing with just a private mortgage.
Denise, you and I and Stuart talked some time ago about putting foreclosure rights in your mortgages as well as power of sale. Are you doing that?
Actually, we have had major problems with that, and it has not been included as of yet.
We're trying to find a lawyer that agrees that it can be done.
Well,
and there's some issues around it with Ontario law.
But Bruce has been able to do it along with Shepherd, I believe is the last name.
Yeah. So certainly, if you know, like I have foreclosure rights on that chicken coop in Carlton Place, and Steve Shepherd helped me with that.
Yeah.
And foreclosure is a permitted and legal proceeding here in Ontario. And so you guys, I think you all know what a foreclosure is and why it's different. So if I were an investor with my registered funds, I would want to have in the mortgage document both power of sale provisions and foreclosure. And the reason I want foreclosure in there is the worst time to sell a property is when it's not doing well. So let's say Simon Case is a rich dude. He's got $600,000 in RRSPs, and he decides to put, a first mortgage on a property that I bought, 100% loan to value of $400,000. All right. Thank you, Simon.
You're welcome.
And he's getting 8% on his money, which is presumably better than what he's already getting. But I would want, if I was advising Simon, I would want Simon to have foreclosure rights in there, just in case I screw up. Maybe I'm adding a basement apartment and I don't do a very good job, or I mishandle the project for some reason. And Simon goes, well, you're not in a position, the loan is mature now. It's a year's gone by. You haven't repaid me. And what are you doing? And, he basically, with foreclosure, it means that he can apply to the courts, get the property in his name, and then fix it, manage it himself, and bring it back to health. And when the markets are better, and the property looks better, if he wants to, he can sell it at that point or just keep it. If it's power of sale, it means the only way for Simon to realize on his security is to put it on MLS as a power of sale. It's disclosed, and maybe the markets are not doing very well. I don't know if you guys are following the situation in Vancouver. Does anybody know what's happening in Vancouver right now?
Yeah.
Definitely a buyer's market.
Well, Vancouver's real estate, everybody has forgotten because it's been a long uphill climb for, Vancouver real estate, but people have forgotten real estate goes like this in Vancouver, all right? I mean, real big sawtooth curve. I'll tell you a short story. My sister, Brenda, was living in Vancouver in the 1980s, and she had her eye on a really cute little 2-bedroom house in Kitsilano near the beach. And she was dithering about it, and it was priced at about $312,000. So she calls me up, and she says, I'm thinking about buying it. What do you think, Bruce? I said, oh my gosh, Brenda, that is a fantastic property. You ought to buy it. You should get on it right away, because I think Vancouver real estate is going to go up. But, my sister is very cautious and very conservative, so she dithered for about 3 weeks, and so somebody else bought it. And then Vancouver real estate just took off. That person resold it about 6 or 8 weeks later for $450,000. They flipped it. The person who bought it for $450,000 flipped it for $550,000. The person who bought it for $550,000 flipped it for $750,000. So that was 3 flips, all right? And it topped out at $800,000 a year and a half later. I'm not kidding. Think about that. Kitsilano is a good part of Vancouver to live in. It's a beautiful area. So my sister now, a year later, is calling me again, and she's weeping on the phone. And I said, Brenda, just wait. This is a true story. A year and a half goes by, and Vancouver's real estate just collapses in the early 90s. And Brenda bought that house for $350,000 5 years later. That is a true story. So she actually got that house, and she was so thrilled. I said, let's just watch, we'll watch. And it went down and down and down, and it kept going, power sale after power sale. And finally, when it got into the mid 300s, she bought it. Now, here's the good news. She held on to it from the mid 90s or early 90s until I think 2006 or 2007, so before the financial crisis. What do you think she sold it for when she moved back to Ottawa?
Oh, over $1 million for sure.
Yeah, it was $1.5 million. Just a teensy little 2-bedroom house. And the people who bought it, nice couple, very well-to-do, they tore it down and built a monster home. So they bought the friggin' lot in Kitsilano for $1.5 million. It was a family from overseas, and they built just a monster home on it. But that tells you what happens in real estate. So the reason, Simon, I would want you to have a foreclosure right in there, and Denise and Stuart, you should reach back out to Steve Shepard about that, because he does that for me, and he'll help you and your clients do that.
When we have reached out, he wasn't available, which is why we haven't used him yet, because
well, you don't have to use
the way it works.
If you use my name, he'll certainly send you the wording. And if you have any difficulty getting that out of him, I'll help you with it. But it makes sense. Simon, I think we put in for your investors out of Toronto, we're helping you with this closing on the 1st of February. I think we put in for them foreclosure provisions, right?
Yeah, we put in both POA and foreclosure.
Yeah. So the power of sale, POA is power of attorney, but POS is a piece of and power of sale. But as an investor, you do not want to use power of sale if you can avoid it. Foreclosure is much more common in the United States, but it's also much more powerful and really puts you as an investor and as a lender in a position where you won't be embarrassed.
Yeah, no, And I'm glad you brought it back up because I had kind of forgotten about that because it's something we had been working with the lawyer we're working with and Stephen at some point, and then it kind of dropped, and yeah, we need to pick it back up too. So no, that's good.
Keep going, kid. You're doing great.
Maintaining the value of the property again is, well, if you've already bought a whole pile of renovations to it, you want to make sure that you're in a neighborhood, in an area that's going to keep its value. You want to make sure that you qualify really good tenants if you're going to be renting it out, or commercial tenants, depending on what it is that you do. It's just that you want to make sure that you maintain that value of that property, period. So don't over leverage. Again, and I put that in there because for a lot of, not for a lot, but for some investors, they don't like the 100% loan to value. So sometimes on a second mortgage, leaving a 10% or a 5% in there, which is great. So when we talk about don't over leverage, is because when it's a second mortgage, people are a little bit more queasy because you're already sort of at the top of the value already, as opposed to when you have a first mortgage and you're 100% loan to value, you know that you're going to be bringing the value up with all of the renovations you're going to be doing. So it's just something to be careful of there too. And one of the things that doesn't happen often, it has happened to us, is just that, let's say we have a few people on the one mortgage and one decides, listen, something's happened, I need my money. And you know what? Although they say no, they're going to stay till the end, we're not going to start a fight or anything like that. We just replace that person with another person. So that portion of that mortgage, somebody else came in and took their place. So it's just something to think about. It's just that it could happen. It happens rarely, but it could happen. Now, so some of the key elements that we use when we're talking about mortgages is that, it has to be secured on Canadian real estate when we're talking about RSP mortgages.
I just should mention here, we traditionally do residential real estate, but there's absolutely nothing in the laws or regulations that restricts us to residential. So as long as it's Canadian real estate, it can be on any type of property.
That's right. And
so can I just comment on that, Stuart? So Trish, did you hear that? So Trish and Guillaume are young people who are interested in acquiring additional property, and one of the directions that Trish and Guillaume and I and Rick Rose, who's a realtor and on the call as well at the top of your screen, one of the things that we've talked about for Trish and Guillaume is buying a mixed-use building. Because they have a very specific goal in mind. And so a mixed-use building would, typically would have like a convenience store or something on the ground floor and would have a few apartments above. Okay, you guys with me on that?
Yep.
And at the end of this slide deck, I'm pretty sure you have your contact information, right, Denise?
Yeah.
So we're going to get to that. So Trish and Guillaume and Rick, when we get to the 15th slide, start writing.
So again, I mentioned it could be a first, second, or third position mortgage, and a lot of people go, wow, third position mortgage, but really, I mean, we've done third position, but there better be a lot of equity in there, and that's the only way we would do third position. And it's not every trustee that will allow third position either. First and second, no problem. Third, some will, and like I said, we've done them, but when you've got more than 50% loan to value taken on the property and all they're looking for is a very small amount, it's a no-brainer. So
Denise,
yes.
Again, I have a different take on that than most trustees and most lenders, and in fact, most investors. I think that the true power rests with a second mortgagee or a third mortgagee. So who is ever in the last position actually has all of the power. So most people don't understand that, and many people don't agree with me. I understand that. But as long as you have a foreclosure provision in there, if you're in third position, you have the absolute right to come in and cure the default on the first or second mortgage and take them out.
Yep.
Everybody clear on that? Do you understand that? So that as an investor, I'm just talking about myself now, and I can only speak to myself, but as an investor, when I had some money and I was an investor, I did not mind being in the second or third position, but I always wanted to be in the last position. And I always wanted to have foreclosure rights so that if I loaned money to Simon, so we're reversing the situation now, Simon, I'm the rich dude loaning money to you, and you've got a first mortgage. I want to be in second position, because if you screw up, I'll come in and I'll cure the default with the first mortgage. Usually you just pay it out and you secure the property in your own name. You own it and you have your own money in there, and then you can do what you need to do with it. You can sell it, or you can refinance it, or just hold on to it for a period of time. So being in second position or being in third position actually puts, if you do it right, actually gives you, the investor, the power that you need to be the final decision maker on this.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
And a lot of people are scared. As soon as you say third position, they just kind of no, and I go, well, really, why not?
Yeah.
It's feasible. So the one thing is that a lot of lenders are very clear as to how much interest rate they want, but sometimes that can be negotiable. And that's the beauty of it, because it's a private mortgage. So you're not stuck like with the rigidness of any bank institution. We're talking people to people here. So sometimes that kind of helps. Flexible repayment terms. What we like is the fact that you have different options that can be used. Like people will pay, principal and interest. People will pay interest only, or people will pay balloon payment, which is interest and principal at the end of the term, which is what we like because they're short term. And I like to have that cash flow to work with during the term of the project. So that's our favorite approach. And that's what we've been able to do most of the time, is to be able to just delay that. And the thing is, when you think about an RSP mortgage holder, when he gets a little bit of interest per month, it sits there anyways. He can't do anything with it unless he's got a substantive amount coming back to his account. Then he can't use it. So why not have the borrower benefit from it rather than the lender sitting there and still can't do anything with it? And the beauty of it is that the borrower pays for all of the cost from both ends. Pays for the lender's lawyer, for the borrower's lawyer, and any administrative costs associated with that mortgage is paid by the borrower, or borne by the borrower.
Yeah. The other thing to keep in mind, in the province of Ontario, if the amount of the mortgage is $50,000 or greater, then both the borrower and lender need their own lawyers. If it's under $50K, one lawyer can represent both sides. So that's important to know going in this. If you're looking at borrowing using this type of strategy, there's the cost there of the two lawyers that you might have to bear.
Now, one of the things that we do is that we have a lot of our funds. I mean, our RRSP funds are all out in mortgages. They never sit around doing anything. But when we have a mortgage coming back, we've got other people that want to invest with us. And what we do is we pull that together for a larger amount. And that's how we can provide, either second mortgages or first mortgages. But we're involved in the mortgage ourselves. Sometimes on a lesser amount than some other mortgages. It all depends on how much of our mortgage money is sort of coming back and what we have coming in. So, but we call that syndicated mortgages, and I call it with a small s, not a large S like the Fortress or that type of syndicated mortgages. All syndicated mortgages, the way we use it, it just means that there's more than one person on that mortgage. So for every amount that a particular lender has, the lawyer will just attribute that portion, a ratio of it, and it's all going to be spelled out on the mortgage document as to how much they have and how much interest of that 100% interest coming back is going to be there. So that's worked out. So it's a great way for anyone, let's say, that has RSP funds to be able to participate into mortgages, even if they have smaller amounts. So, which is, really good.
So just to summarize what
So before you summarize, Stuart, I wanted to ask Janice a question. You still with us, Janice?
Yes.
Janice is you're still in Green Valley in Arizona?
Yes, I am.
And how's the temperature there today?
Oh, today was great. It was, 67?
67 degrees.
Today, yes.
Yeah, that's nice. So it's going to be minus 22 on Saturday in Ottawa. So you're welcome to fly up here and enjoy the cold weather with us. So Janice, did you notice, so Janice has done some RRSP investing, but did you notice that all of the RRSP investing, at least almost all of it, that Denise and Stuart are talking about, and in fact, all of it, is secured on the property.
Right.
All right. So some of the the RRSP investing that you've done, I think, was just with promissory notes. Am I right?
Not our RSP money, no.
No. So it was other monies that you used, but non-RRSP money.
Right.
But all of that money, whether it's loaned, it's outside of registered funds, or if it's registered funds, in my view, should be registered on property. It's an incredibly important security for you as an investor. You with me on that?
Yes.
And just in case people, are trying to run away with your money, it's harder to run away with your money if you're registered on title. Whether it's registered funds or not registered funds, I think that's really, Denise and Stuart have kind of covered that, okay?
Right.
So Janice is in the States?
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she's near
Oh,
Tucson.
Windtrain. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, well, she's a Canadian, but,
Yeah.
living the high life.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Do your summary thing there.
All right.
Stuart.
So, basically, because of the audience tonight, we're talking about how you can use a mortgage to further your investment portfolio. So really what it comes down to is using this is a way of using other people's money to increase your return on investment. It's nice because you don't have to go through the hassle of the bank qualification. This will actually give you access to more property without the bank lender limitations. Plus the other thing is that actually allows you to help people by giving them a better return than traditional products. Instead of just feathering the nest of the big banks, you're helping ordinary people build their retirement portfolio, build their pension.
So that's basically it. We're still here, that if anybody has any questions, we'd be gladly to, Bruce wants to see if anybody has any questions. But for us, it's been great. Like I said, we've been using RSP mortgages now from the get-go. Actually, we did RSP mortgages before we even bought our very first property. So we've been doing them now for quite some time. So, which is why we love to do them. That's why we love to teach about it, talk about it, and be able to loan out money to help other people. Because it's such a great way to do it, to increase your portfolio and increase your returns.
Yeah. So Janice, if I was still the owner of the Ottawa Senators and I had RRSP money to invest, I would be comfortable. I'm not just saying because Denise and Stuart are on the call with us, but I would be comfortable investing it through them. And probably it's the only way that I would do it, because one of the things I've learned, and I think everybody on this call will understand, one of the things I've learned is when people are really good at something, that has a lot of value. So what do I know about being an RRSP investor? A little bit, but Denise and Stuart know a lot. And I think the fees that you're charging, Denise and Stuart, for arranging an RRSP mortgage are pretty low. Well,
we generally charge an amount around 2%.
Yeah.
Lending fee.
Yeah. 2% on a $100,000 RRSP loan, 2% is $2,000. I certainly see fees anywhere from 2% to 4% in this kind of world. So 2%, I think, is in my view anyway, is a fair deal. And Denise was quoting me earlier when for most entrepreneurs who are making anywhere from 18 to 24% internal rate of return on their real estate investments, having some availability, additional availability of capital, going to maybe 100% or close to 100% loan to value on a purchase, that unlocks a lot of possibilities. And I'm just lucky that I was able to close on that townhouse. It's got to be 10 years ago now, and access my LIRA in this roundabout way. So had I known Denise and Stuart, my life would have been a lot easier than knowing that lawyer by the name of Jim.
Yeah.
All right, so does anybody have any questions for Denise and Stuart? This is a great opportunity. These guys really know this stuff. Rick?
How do we go about setting up a telephone appointment with you to discuss further?
There's our phone number right there.
Yeah.
Or email.
Either call us on that or send us an email
Yeah.
and we'll just schedule a time.
Yeah, perfect.
And I think, guys, info at SDMAC
Properties.
.com goes to both Denise and Stuart.
It
Yes.
does.
So they both see it. And I think that is a cell number, so you can text that number too.
Right.
And look at the tagline at the bottom, positively impacting the lives of others using real estate. That's a very strong tagline. I super believe in it.
So do we. That's where we like to use it.
Guillaume.
Hi guys, I'd like to know if I can use my pension plan. So I retired from firefighting in Gatineau last year, and now I just have money there that I can't touch, and I want to know if I could put it to good use in real estate.
Are you able to move it to a self-directed plan?
I believe so.
If you can move it to a self-directed plan, you can use these strategies.
Okay, so I'll give you a call tomorrow then.
All right.
Janice, you had a question for Denise or Stuart?
Yes, so to go through with mortgages through Denise and Stuart, do they do all the paperwork then?
Yeah, that's what we do for our consulting fee is we organize all of that. If you are a borrower, we'll give you some advice on how to put together the package so that we can share the package with lenders to show them the value of the opportunity and to give them a comfort level. If you are a lender, then we'll work with you. Denise has actually even done a three-way call with Olympia Trust, who's one of the trustees that does this.
Wow.
To help a person move their money into Olympia Trust and get it ready to be lent out as a mortgage.
So that would come in with you there, Guillaume.
Awesome.
The other thing that we should mention is that when we help put together a mortgage, we participate in every mortgage. So it's not as if we're acting like a mortgage agent and just putting people together and we don't care what happens. We've got some skin in the game as well. We're participating in every mortgage.
So the way you have to look at it too is because we use our money, we need to feel confident that our money is going to be safe too. So, and that goes for everybody that's there, that will be participating. And we have a template that when people want to, do a submission, we have a template that we kind of use. It's through kind of a PowerPoint, just all of the headlines that we kind of need and what we're looking for, and plus what the trustee is going to need also. So we include all of that in there so that you're prepared, so that the lender has a informed decision that they can make based on the information you provide on the project that you're working on.
Okay.
Another question there, Janice?
Yes, I have one more question. I'm looking at, okay, the term on a mortgage. Can that be somewhat dependent upon what the interest rate is? Like if I'm a lender and like how long can something be out on a loan basis?
It's all negotiable.
Well, negotiable, but it all depends on the project. If somebody's doing a buy, renovate, animate, and refinance, that could be 4 months plus a little bit till they get that refinance in, so all the renovations are done. So what we tend to do, like, just to give you an example, we had, we've invested heavily in the Toronto market at some point. There were investors there that were doing some projects, and we invested, and they had called us and they were looking for a 9-month, we had already done projects with them, but this time they asked us, we need 9 months. And I go, no. And they were very disappointed. And I said, I'll give you 12. And they go, what? And I said, I'll tell you why. I said, has it ever happened that you were not able to finish a project on time? She said, yeah. I said, well, then I'm giving you that option to be able to extend it, to not have to worry about coming up with the money because the mortgage is now finished and you can't pay it out, or having to remortgage again and adding extra costs. We say, why don't we do 12 months and we do no prepayment penalties? So if you pay me in 9 months, great. If you pay me in 10 months, great. If you need the full 12 months, at least you were covered. So guess what? On that particular project, they paid us in 10 months, which I'm glad we gave them 12.
So, Janice, just so you know, on that chicken coop that I have a second mortgage on, and my pal there has a second mortgage on my townhouse. Believe it or not, the term on that is 11 years, and the amortization on that is 11 years, because he loaned me $70,000, I loaned him $69,000, and we used a very low interest rate. Right, we did not want to pay. It could have been 8%, it could have been 10%, but he's paying me 10%, I'm paying him 10%. Really. So we just said, look, we'll make. It had to be some kind of an interest rate, so we used 3%, and we went with 11 years. Right, so he's paying me back, and I'm paying him back, and that's how I accessed my own funds. Right, so really, I'm paying myself in a way. Does that make any sense, Janice?
Yes.
So it could be as short as 4 months.
A few months, yeah.
It could be as long as a year, or in some cases it's negotiable. And what Cheyenne did and what I did was we traded money basically, with an 11-year term and 11-year amortization.
Just Bruce, I know that's how you did it, but I do have to warn people.
Don't say that.
If you're caught by CRA swapping funds, you can get into some major difficulty.
Right. So,
the nice thing is
what I just described was theoretical.
And the good thing is that
allegedly,
it's not as if you and Cheyenne had identical amounts of money for identical periods of time.
No, we did not. No, we didn't. Well, not identical amounts of money, and not on the same day. But look. As you know, I believe it's very important to respect the building code, make sure that people are safe in our buildings. But I'm less concerned, I will admit this, and I can't coach people to do this, but I'm less concerned about bylaws, which I think can be very arbitrary. And frankly, I'm less concerned about CRA rules. Maybe I should be more concerned, but I'm not, because I think it's inherently unfair. And when I think something is unfair, as I think everybody knows on this call, I put ethics before the law. I think when ethics and the law diverge, we should go with what's ethically appropriate. And I certainly don't lose any sleep over dealing with Cheyenne, and I'm sure he doesn't lose any sleep over dealing with me. And I hope Jim goes to hell.
But you know what we've told other investors too, and they say, because some investors, they say, well, I want 15% for my money. I said, well, great, go elsewhere, because this is not where you're going to get it. But imagine if you've got RSP funds and you can get 8 or 10%, but then you can borrow for 8 or 10%. I can tell you, there's a friend of ours who is a mortgage broker who will do private mortgages, and his rates start at 15% plus 7 points.
Yeah.
So you're talking 22%, and you haven't even done anything yet.
Yeah, this is a fantastic opportunity for the people on this call and the people who will be watching this video at some point. It will be on an unlisted YouTube video. So Denise and Stuart, we've kept you for now over an hour. I don't know, guys, can we give Denise and Stuart? Simon or Nick, wake up.
Yeah, where is Nick?
He's there. There you go. So I'm going to stop the recording now, just so I have an hour and 10 minutes focused on one thing. So I'm going to stop the recording. And again, Denise and Stuart, you're out of school. Thanks again.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Bruce.
Take care.
Bye, everyone. Good night.